नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यान् देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे राम 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 हरे हरे मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्येश्वरं हरि ओं तत्सत् हरे कृष्णा. Okay, so let's begin the session today. So we are into the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So far we have covered until the chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita. So these sessions that we are having for roughly around 1 hour, honestly speaking, within 1 hour, it is quite difficult to cover everything from each chapter. Usually, if you visit any of the ISKCON centers, you happen to go on a Saturday or Sunday, you would find a Bhagavad Gita class where the speaker would speak about one verse for nearly half an hour to 45 minutes, typically. But over here, we are only having the gist of the entire chapter. We cannot do full justice to what Supreme Lord Krishna has spoken in these chapters. All we are trying is to give you that glimpse, which should actually inspire you to go and read Bhagavad Gita as it is, cover to cover. As Srila Prabhupada, the founder of ISKCON, often says. So one should read these books cover to cover, from introduction, or even before that you would find the preface section of Bhagavad Gita. From there you need to start, go on till the end of Bhagavad Gita. So I strongly recommend that. That's why at the end of the session I always emphasize, you go and read that particular chapter which we covered in this week. So today we will cover 7th chapter. From tomorrow until end of the next week, I request you to please read all the verses, translation and purport of chapter 7. Right? So that's my sincere request. It is going to be greatly beneficial to all. So that much I can say. And tomorrow we will not be having our session, as I informed last week, because tomorrow in ISKCON Chennai, we are having a grand Rath Yatra celebration. So this is the annual function where we would take in procession Shri Jagannath, Baldev and Subhadra. So the session will happen very close to ISKCON Chennai. That's in the ECR road. So devotees are most welcome to participate in these sessions. Okay. So I have also shared the invitation. I have also shared the invitation to you all. So I request devotees, those who are in Chennai at least.
Location?
Sorry?
Can you share the location?
Location is, if you are familiar with the ECR road, Mataji, it's in Palavakam near Reliance showroom.
Okay.
I don't know the Google map location, I'm sorry, but if you travel via this ECR road, you will not miss on that day. You can see the big Rath on the road itself, main road.
And will it be too crowded? Will it be possible for us to come there?
Definitely you can come. So the rope is quite big. You can just come and participate in the Rath Yatra. Many devotees, we travel along the Rath through the entire route, hardly 8-9 kilometers probably. And then it will reach ISKCON Chennai around 5:30. It would start by 2 and it would reach ISKCON Chennai by 5:30. The Rath will
Start
move.
from?
Sorry?
Start from which location?
That's what, Palavakam, Reliance showroom.
Okay.
I have shared the invitation in the group, Mata. I can reshare.
No, I'm not in the group, so I got this link from one of my relatives. I got.
Okay. So then you can ping me on my mobile. I will share you the invitation.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So last week, we saw the chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 6 is dedicated to Dhyana Yoga. So basically, the prerequisite for Dhyana Yoga is sense and mind control. The practitioner of such yogas, they typically go into secluded place, maybe a forest or Bhagavad Dham like Vrindavan, so many places. Right? So they go there, stay in a secluded place where there is no disturbance in the form of other living entities, and they sit in such a position where their neck and back, everything is in erection, and they try to focus on the tip of the nose. So not fully closed, not fully open as well, half open. And with that note, they try to focus on the tip of the nose, meditating on the form of the Lord, the Supreme Lord Narayana. So like that, these Dhyana yogis, they perform meditation for many thousands of years. Ultimately, they try to see the Supreme Lord as Paramatma within their heart. So that Paramatma realization is the end goal of Dhyana Yoga. We saw in the chapter how Arjuna was actually rejecting this yoga, saying that he could even think of controlling a very strong wind, but he cannot control his own mind. Right? So mind is something which is uncontrollable. Krishna says when the mind is in uncontrolled state, it is our enemy, and a controlled mind is our best of friends. Arjuna said it is not possible, practically speaking. So then Krishna said that it is possible by continuous practice and also with an element of detachment. It is definitely possible. Easier than the Dhyana Yoga process is definitely Bhakti Yoga, because Dhyana Yoga is typically performed for thousands of years. Especially in this age of Kali, it is practically not possible. Whereas Bhakti Yoga, you can simply be in your family life, sitting in your home, start chanting sincerely the Lord's name. You can start with a minimum of 108 times of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. There is no limit to the number of times that you can chant. You can go on and on. So Srila Prabhupada, he recommends minimum of 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So 16 rounds means 16 into 108 times. So each one of us, we can have this chanting bead, which has 108 mala, 108 beads in it. You can start off by chanting in that bead. You can also buy a chanting bag, which is available in ISKCON. In case any one of you want chanting beads of or bag, you can please let me know on my mobile. I can definitely try to courier to your address. So basically, by chanting in a bead, you are engaging your senses. Your hand is engaged and your tongue is engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord. And as you are hearing the holy name that you recite, automatically your mind comes under control. Whereas in meditation or Dhyana Yoga is something that you do within your mind. So because of which your mind goes for a wander. Whereas in Bhakti Yoga, you are engaging all your senses in the Lord's service, starting from chanting of the holy name. So by that, because your senses are engaged in Krishna's service, automatically mind comes under control. So you need not make special endeavor to control your mind. So, and that's why Krishna in the end of 6th chapter, he says, Yoginam api sarvesham madgathenantaratmanam. So basically he says that Yoginam api sarvesham. Who is the topmost yogi? That person who is always thinking of the Supreme Lord Krishna, rendering service to him with love and devotion. So such a person is very dear to Supreme Lord Krishna. So that's why Bhagavad Gita recommends the followers to practice Bhakti Yoga, which is prescribed method specifically for Kali Yuga, but it is also the only means to attain the Supreme Lord in all time, space, and circumstances. So that's where we ended in the last week. Today we will begin with the chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita. So before we begin chapter 7, any questions that any one of you may have? Okay, so let's begin. So this chapter is entitled Knowledge of the Absolute. So who is the Absolute? Supreme Lord is Krishna. So in this chapter, we are going to cover various aspects that Krishna is speaking here. Between 1 to 3rd verse, Krishna speaks about how this knowledge can be received through learning. And how that learning happens. There are 2 ways in which it can happen. We will discuss in detail in the upcoming slides. Subsequently, between verses 4 to 12, Krishna is actually talking about his own energy, how his energy is pervading everywhere. So what are the different types of energies that emanate from the Supreme Lord? So that knowledge Krishna gives between verses 4 to 12. And then between 13 to 19, so we can actually either accept or reject Krishna. So what happens when somebody accepts, and what would be the result when somebody rejects Krishna? So atheists, they don't believe in Krishna. They don't believe in Bhagavad Gita at all. So what happens to the 2 categories of people? So that is something which Krishna discusses in verses 13 to 19. Between 20 to 25, Krishna speaks about demigod worship. So who are those kind of people that worship other devatas? There are 33 crore devatas in our Sanatan Dharma. So basically, within our body, there are many devatas who are controlling the actions of each of the organs. Like when we are breathing in and out, so that is controlled by Vayu. And you are digesting the food that you eat, so that is actually controlled by one devata. So like that, each of the functions of the material body, they are controlled by different devatas. And people also worship these devatas. So what is Krishna's opinion about such worship? So that is between 20 to 25. And finally, between 26 to 30, Krishna says, who can become a devotee of the Lord? What kind of persons can become a devotee? Right? So that knowledge Krishna gives between 26 to 30. Okay, so we will begin with this wonderful verse. The first verse of this chapter. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Mayyasaktamana Partha Yogam Yunjan Madashraya Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yada Jnasyasi Tachruno. Supreme Personality of Godhead said, now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. So earlier in the 6th chapter, Krishna spoke about Dhyana Yoga. He ended that chapter by saying Bhakti Yoga is the topmost yoga, isn't it? So that was the conclusion of 6th chapter. So Krishna begins the 7th chapter by saying, when somebody practices the system of yoga in full consciousness of the Supreme Lord Krishna, with one's mind attached to the Supreme Lord's lotus feet, so such a person can know Krishna without any doubt. Right? So often we study Bhagavad Gita and then we try to practice a little bit of what is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Right? So we are not able to completely focus in Krishna consciousness. So in such cases, then we may not be able to understand the Supreme Lord in full. Right? So this requires somebody to practice this Krishna consciousness where the mind is completely fixed in the Supreme Lord Krishna. So that is the perfection of Krishna consciousness. So we will understand this a little bit more in this chapter. So when we would have that full conviction that Krishna is all in all and my job is to render service to Krishna, so that would come through knowledge. Right? So when would we have a full faith in the Supreme Lord? When we have proper knowledge. And there are two ways in which we can acquire this knowledge. One is the ascending process. The other one is the descending process. So what do you mean by ascending process? So there are people who do lot of Vedic studies. They try to understand the Supreme through analysis and study of different Vedic scriptures. As you know, the entire Vedas is quite vast. It is compared to a big ocean. Ocean has no ends, literally, right? You cannot see the end of the ocean. So Vedas are like that. Broadly speaking, there are 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharva, and 108 Upanishads are also part of Vedas. So that in itself is quite huge. So when somebody attempts to understand the supreme absolute truth by studying Vedas, it is what is called ascending process. But as you can imagine, this process is quite tedious. So first of all, where do we have time to allocate in our busy schedule of materialistic life, trying to study and understand the Vedas? None of us know Sanskrit or the language in which Vedas are written. So basically, the Devanagari is what they say. So even if you understand the language, where do we have the time to study all these Vedic scriptures? So the recommended process is the descending process. So what is the descending process? Basically, you don't put all the effort on your own trying to understand the Supreme. Rather, you depend on exalted personalities who have already received that knowledge. Right? Like, for example, I may have a specific doubt in something. Say, for example, I want to know how I can make a nice sweet kheer. Right? So, what do? I don't experiment trying to understand how to make a sweet kheer. I directly go. These days, all of us, we go to the YouTube or to the internet, type in on the Google how to make a sweet kheer, and you get the readily available recipe. Right? So probably you will find out which is an authentic website, and you would follow whatever is mentioned there. So that is the descending process. So you have an authentic source and you receive the knowledge from that source. So the example that I gave is a crude example, may not be entirely applicable for Vedic understanding. So for Vedic understanding, you cannot go to the internet and try to find the absolute truth. I'm just giving a crude example in our material life. So basically, you depend on a particular source and you follow that source. So who should we depend on to understand this knowledge? From whom should I receive that knowledge? So that we will see in the upcoming slides. So science always works through ascending process. Scientists, they don't agree to something which they have not seen. Say, for example, if I go to a scientist and say that Supreme Lord is Krishna, then immediately the scientist would shoot back with a question to me, show me the proof. Who is Krishna? I want to see who that person is. Right? So we can never settle such an argument. So ascending process is quite difficult. So we can clearly understand in the modern science where people try to go to different planets, from the moon planet to the Mars and various other planets, right? Prabhupada in the 1960s, at that time itself, he categorically said these scientists attempt to go to the other planets will be futile. Nobody can go to other planets just by getting launched in a rocket or a satellite, right? So which holds good even till date. Imagine 1965, which is what 50, 60 years back. So even till date, we are not able to successfully go to a moon planet and stay there forever. Going to moon planet is one thing, but will you be able to sustain your life there? Right? Which scientists they cannot explain. They can keep trying for millions of lifetimes, but they will never succeed. Right? So understanding the absolute truth, you cannot achieve by scientific research. Why? What is the reason that we say scientists or scientific processes cannot work here? Because all of us have 4 defects. So what are those 4 defects? The first one is mentioned here. All our senses are imperfect. Right? So we can only perceive to some extent. Like for example, with our own physical eyes, I will be able to see probably an object which is there, say 5 or 6 kilometers. Right? So I cannot see beyond that limit, that distance. And similarly, even if you want to explore something using your scientific equipments, even then your scientific equipment is also a matter. It is a material thing. So it also has its own limitations. You cannot see or perceive things beyond certain limit. Right? So knowledge will never be perfect. And think about perceiving the small spirit soul. If you recollect the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, what was the size of a spirit soul that Krishna mentions there? Anybody could recollect?
One in
It would be a
10,000.
tip of hair.
Right, tip of the hair, and how much part? How many parts?
1 in 10,000. 1 in 10,000.
1 in 10,000 part. Right? So even if you imagine that, okay, I have found an equipment or invented an equipment that could actually perceive an object of that dimension, but still you won't be able to see the spirit soul. Why? Why you cannot see the spirit soul?
You need special sense.
Yeah. So basically, spirit soul is of spiritual in nature. And we are talking about our material eyes and material senses. Using material eyes and senses, we cannot perceive something which is spiritual. So we cannot perceive spirit soul, what to speak of the Supreme Lord. Right? You can forget that at all. I mean, we cannot use any scientific equipments to see the Supreme Lord Krishna. Mainly because our senses are imperfect and we have certain limitations. And the second problem or second defect is that we all tend to commit mistakes. Right? So here in the photograph, we can see somebody attempting to prepare a certain recipe, but it turned out to be a disaster. Right? So even though we may be an expert in some things, but still we make mistakes. As it is often said, to err is human. As human beings, we all make mistakes. Right? That's why we find even amidst the scientific community, whatever theory or proofs that was shown by a particular scientist in a particular period, that gets refuted over a period of time. Right? So typical example is the shape of this earth. So it is mentioned in the scriptures clearly that the shape of the earth is bhugola, which means it is cylindrical in shape. Right? So, but these scientific theories, so they cannot understand things which are beyond their sense perception. So you cannot rely on your senses since it makes mistakes. Right? So many of us have had these experiences. Right? Whenever we walk at night, we stamp on something in the pitch dark, and we assume that we have stamped on something, some living object. Right? And then when we switch on the light, we find out that no, it was actually a rope. Right? So we make mistakes. We perceive things wrongly. So we also have cheating propensity. Right? So we cheat others. If you talk about many of the scientists, whatever great inventions that they are making, after all, they are cheating the general mass of people. Right? They invented the so-called atomic energy. Initially, they said it is done with a good intention to produce the energy that would sustain the entire globe. But what's happening now with all these inventions? Right? It is actually bringing in catastrophe. People are killing each other with these atomic weapons. Right? So, and we also get illusion. We perceive certain things to be in a way, but in reality, it turns out to be something else. Right? We all have this experience, especially when you go on highways, you go on a drive. It looks like there is water ahead of us, but then when we go on the road, we find that it is actually an illusion. There is no water on the road. Right? So when there is hot sun and the sunlight gets reflected on the road, it appears to be that water is present there, but in reality, there is no water. Just like you go in a desert, you have a mirage, right? So it looks like there is water available there, but then as you go near there, you will find that there is no water. So we all get into a lot of illusions. One of the common illusion that we all get into is that we think that we are this body, but in reality, we are not this body and we are the spirit soul. So that is the bottom line illusion that we are all put into. So with these four defects, our senses are imperfect. We tend to commit mistakes. We also have this cheating propensity, and we get into illusion. So these four defects are there in all of us, all the living entities, including the so-called advanced scientists. So this ascending process of receiving knowledge is not proper, because we all have these 4 defects. So the life lesson for all of us is that when we know that we are imperfect, we all have these 4 defects, then it is intelligence that should say that we need to consult a perfect source for our decisions. So we cannot make any decisions on our own simply because I am prone to commit these 4 defects. So Lord and his incarnations, they are free from these imperfections. These 4 defects that I was talking about, that is only applicable to you and me. The Supreme Lord Krishna, he is above all these 4 defects. So that's why the Vedas is called the source of all knowledge. Why? Because these Vedas are given by the Supreme Lord Krishna himself. So Krishna, because he is above these 4 defects, he has actually given the Vedas. So Vedic knowledge, when it is received through proper source, through a proper bona fide personality, that is free from these 4 defects. So that is something which we need to understand. And to have this understanding, we need to have proper faith. Faith in the Lord, faith in the scriptures. As you can see in these pictures, that we actually have a lot of faith in too many people. Imagine we going to a hospital, getting operated in the hands of a doctor. Don't we have faith in the doctor? We have all the faith. We know that he is going to give us the anesthesia and then perform the surgical procedure. But we have complete faith in the hands of the doctor. And similarly, when we go to a salon trying to trim our hair, so what is the assurance that the salonist is not going to trip off our head using the scissors and the knife, right? So we have all faith in the salonist, right? Similarly, when we go on a bus or on a train journey or we go on a flight, so we keep all the faith in the driver, right? So, and all the medical medicines and pills that we take, so we all consume those medicines in absolute faith. We don't question at all, right? So we need to have the same amount of faith while we are receiving this knowledge. This transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, it should be received from authority. Only when we have firm faith in the Supreme Lord Krishna and his bona fide representatives, only then can we understand the supreme knowledge. And this faith does not require any PhD degree. You can be a simple person. You can even be an illiterate when it comes to material knowledge, but still you can become the topmost devotee provided you have this faith. A typical example is the cobbler story. I'm sure most of you would be aware of this, right? It is something which we have learned from our childhood days, right? So there was a cobbler and there was a great Brahmana. So then Narada Muni, he traveled all along and then he met these 2 people and he wanted to know who would reach the Supreme Lord's abode first. So he went and asked the Supreme Lord Narayana that, I want to know the destination of these 2 people. So Narada was hoping that Brahmana would obviously be the first one to reach Vaikuntha. So then the Supreme Lord said, okay, don't decide like that. You go and tell these people, the cobbler and the Brahmana, that when you go and meet them, they would obviously be asking you, what happened to Narayana, what was he doing? Then you tell them that, Lord Narayana, so he was actually doing an amazing thing. And what was the amazing thing that Narayana was doing? That Narada Muni was about to say. Anybody knows that story?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, you can continue, Mataji, from here.
Okay, right. Through that hole of the needle, he was trying to insert that elephant. And so that Narada Muni goes back and then tells the Brahmana about this. And Brahmana says, no, how is it possible? What are you talking? It's not possible, he says.
Right.
But when he goes to that cow, right, he says it is, no, it's definitely possible, because that seed from the pupil's tree, from the seed, when a big tree grows, why not this can happen? So he trusts and he has got faith in his deed. So he goes back and tells the same thing to Bhagavan, and Bhagavan says only the cobbler will come to this spiritual world after death.
Excellent.
Take.
Thank you, Mataji. I hope all of you understood this wonderful lesson-giving story, isn't it? So one may think that what is it that this cobbler can achieve? But because he had that strong faith in the Lord, it is not that he was knowledgeable or he knows everything behind the matter. No, he was quite a simple person, but he had that firm faith because he was able to perceive the Lord's miracles. Nothing is impossible for the Supreme Lord. If he can actually make such a big, huge banyan tree inside a small little seed, obviously the Lord can do anything, isn't it? So that faith is something which somebody is requiring in order to receive this process through the descending process. Right? So the lesson for us is that, so we need to inculcate this faith in the scriptures. Unfortunately, with our modern education, we have lost faith in the scriptures. Our modern education teaches us that Ramayana and Mahabharata are myth. If you asked any children in this age, in the present age, they would, without any hesitation, say that the characters of Lord Rama or Lord Krishna, they are mythological characters. They never existed. So that is the effect of this modern education. We have lost faith in our age-old tradition, age-old history. Ramayana and Mahabharata are history. These incidents happened thousands and millions of years back. But the modern education and the modern sociologists and politicians, they wanted to simply exploit the people, and they want to cut the root of our culture, which is the Vedic culture, right? So we need to reinvent that faith again in the scriptures. So Krishna goes on to say that there is no superior to Supreme Lord Krishna. He says, Krishna himself says, everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Right? So there is a beautiful necklace here made out of pearl. So how is this pearl necklace made? What is holding these beads here?
The thread.
Thread, right? So if you cut the thread, then obviously the entire necklace would go for a waste, isn't it? You need to again make the jewel again, right? So similarly, the Supreme Lord is that thread upon which everything actually rests upon, right? Just imagine that, when we wake up in the morning, we see blue sky, and then we go to the shore near Marina Beach, we see wonderful ocean, right? The Bay of Bengal. Everything goes on as smooth as possible. Just imagine when you open at night, you can see millions of stars. None of the stars fall on this planet. How is it possible that they are all working in their particular orbit? So synchronously. Who is making everything happen? Obviously, there should be a person who is controlling everything, isn't it? When you just think of our normal day-to-day activity, and then you can find that people go on a car. So without a driver, can you imagine a car being driven? One may say that, oh no, Prabhu, in US they have found a driverless car. Okay, even if you want a driverless car, it needs to have the algorithm or logic, which should in turn be written by a human being, right? So there is a living entity or soul required to perform that action. So how can this entire cosmic manifestation be created without the Supreme Lord's presence? So that's why Krishna himself is saying that everything rests on him. So we need to have that strong faith in the Supreme Lord's statement. So we need to improve our vision by hearing to see the unseen. We cannot see the Supreme Lord by our physical eyes. We can only see the Supreme Lord by hearing about him. So that is the difference between somebody trying to understand the Supreme Lord through the descending process as against the ascending process. In the ascending process, one tries to see through their own physical senses. But in the descending process, one tries to see the Supreme Lord through his ears by hearing about the Lord's name, fame, qualities, and pastimes. Don't try to see God, work in a way that God wants to see you. This is the famous statement told by Srila Prabhupada's Guru, spiritual master. So it is like this. When we want to see the Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, do you think it is possible that we can go and see him? Obviously not, right? If you go near his place in New Delhi, then obviously you'll be thrown out. They will think that this person is completely gone mad, that he wants to see this Prime Minister of this country. So rather, imagine a situation where I do something extraordinary for the nation, and I have made the entire nation proud. Say, for example, recently the cricket team won the World Cup. Then the Prime Minister himself is sending an invite to all the players. You come to my home and I want to host you a lunch party. So they are able to meet the Prime Minister in person. How did this happen? Sorry? Yeah, can you be on mute, please? So this is possible because you have performed something extraordinary and you are getting the attention of the Prime Minister of India directly. So imagine if this is something true for a Prime Minister of the nation, what to speak of the Supreme Lord of this entire cosmic manifestation. Do you think we will be able to see the Lord face to face with our imperfect senses, 4 defects that we talked about before? Obviously not. Then we need to gain that qualification so that the Lord sees us. We need to perform such activities which will please the Supreme Lord Krishna so that he would like to see us face to face. So that would be an intelligent way of trying to see the Supreme Lord Krishna. So Krishna's energy in this section, between the verses 7.4 and 7.5, we can understand that Krishna is talking about the different subtle bodies. So we understood about the spirit soul. We are not this body, we are the spirit soul, and the size of the spirit soul is 1 by 10,000 part of tip of the hair. And we also covered briefly about our material mind. Now there are two other components called intelligence and ego. Intelligence is like the driver of the chariot. In the last session, we saw this example, isn't it? You have a chariot, and the passenger in that chariot is the spirit soul. You have a driver who is the intelligence, and you have mind, which is nothing but the string attached to the horses, and you have 5 different horses, which are the 5 senses. So when the intelligence or the driver of the chariot is strongly in control of the chariot, then obviously the chariot would go in the direction that he wants. If the intelligence sleeps, then the mind or the string to which the horses are attached, they would be let loose, and obviously all the 5 senses of the horses, they would go here and there, right? So these subtle bodies of mind, intelligence, and ego, they are so essential or so crucial that as long as the hierarchy is maintained, right? So your senses, and above the senses is the mind, and above the mind is the intelligence. When we have this hierarchy maintained, then our senses will come under control, and our mind also comes under control, right? So in essence, these are the subtle bodies that Krishna talks about, and we have our gross body, which is our physical body, and we also have the subtle body. And apart from this gross and subtle body, we also have the spirit soul. So this is the living entities composition, right? And Krishna also talks about the aspect of Satchit Ananda. Sat means eternity, Chit means knowledge, and Ananda means blissfulness or happiness. So this Satchit Ananda is the nature of the spirit soul. By nature, we all want to be happy, we all want to be eternal, and we all want to be in full of knowledge, right? And this is possible only when we start rendering service to the Supreme Lord Krishna. When the individual spirit soul renders service to the Supreme Spirit Soul, only then he would be happily situated on the platform of Satchidananda. Right? So these are the aspects that Krishna talks about in these verses 4 and 5. And then Krishna also gives us the glimpse of how his energy is pervading everywhere. How you can perceive the Supreme Lord everywhere. You cannot miss Krishna anywhere. It's not that only when you go to a temple of Radha Krishna, only there you can see the Supreme Lord Krishna. No. If you are little advanced in your spiritual knowledge, then you will be able to perceive the Lord's presence anywhere and everywhere. Krishna gives some simple examples. You take a sip of water. Imagine, you are roaming here and there in the hot sun, mid of May, and then you come back home. Your wife gives you a cup of water. Wouldn't it taste nicely or not?
Yes,
obviously, right? You cannot compensate that to anything else. So, and what is the taste of water? The Supreme Lord Krishna, right? He is the taste of water. And so we also have the sun every day morning, whether we want it or not want. We can see the sun rays every day at a particular time. The sun rises. So what are we able to perceive? The Supreme Lord's presence here. And Krishna also says, I am the ability in man. Somebody is performing such a nice musical performance, right? Who is giving that ability? We cannot own that ability, right? I cannot say that by birth I am born with this ability. No, nobody can say that way. So it is Krishna who is the origin of the abilities of each and every one of us. Somebody may be good at cooking, others may be good at memorizing slokas, somebody else may be very good at swimming, right? You find different people with different set of abilities. And who is the origin of all those abilities? Supreme Lord Krishna. And then Krishna says he is the sound in ether, right? So like that, Krishna, he goes on to say in this chapter various means by which we can never miss Krishna at all. You know, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, he was once traveling in a flight. And, you know, in flight, even these days as well, you would have a screen and they would show some different movies while we were traveling in the sky, isn't it? So those days in Prabhupada's time in the 60s as well, in flights in the US, they used to show different movies. And when Prabhupada was traveling, they had shown a movie of Charlie Chaplin, the famous actor. The famous actor. So when Prabhupada was actually seeing that on flight, he was literally laughing out loud, and the devotees nearby who were traveling along with Prabhupada, they were completely surprised. They thought that Srila Prabhupada, being a spiritual personality, he would not be interested in these mundane televisions and movies. But then Prabhupada, he said, just see how humorous this person, Charlie Chaplin, is. And what is the origin of this person? It is Krishna. Krishna is the most humorous person. So I am able to see Krishna in the humor of Charlie Chaplin. So when we are actually watching a Charlie Chaplin movie, we wouldn't see Krishna there, right? So we would only be enjoying the acting or the personality called Charlie Chaplin. But here is a spiritual personality called Srila Prabhupada, who was able to perceive the presence of the Supreme Lord everywhere. They cannot miss Krishna anywhere. Right? So that's about Krishna's energy. And subsequently, Krishna says how these people who are trying to understand who the Supreme Truth is, they are very rare. Bahunam Janmanam Ante. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very, very rare. When somebody comes to the point of trying to understand Krishna through the study of Bhagavad Gita, such souls are very, very rare, according to Krishna's own statements, which means that all 32 of us, or maybe even more than 32, right? In one connection, I can see multiple people attending the classes. All 32 plus devotees here in this call, according to Krishna, we are all great souls. Right? Provided we surrender to Krishna as per Bhagavad Gita's instructions. Right? And this understanding is not so easy. After many, many lifetimes, somebody comes to this point of surrendering to Krishna. We all have begun this process of surrendering to Krishna. As soon as we start chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, as soon as we start studying Bhagavad Gita, we have actually begun that process of surrender. Right? So in the eyes of Krishna, we are all special souls. And Krishna further in the couple of verses, he talks about people who accept Krishna and those who reject him. Initially, he talks about those who reject him, because that is very easy to say. Who are those that reject Krishna? Those who are grossly foolish, lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake in atheistic nature of demons. Such people, they do not surrender to Krishna. In the Kali Yuga, in modern age, we can find 99% of people falling into this category only. Isn't it? People who are grossly foolish. Even though you may go and tell them hundreds of times the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, but still they don't have any interest at all. Just see, in Chennai, I'm not sure what is the population, probably more than 1 crore, maybe. Anybody knows the population of Chennai? Yeah, probably more than 1 crore, I think.
Close to 1 crore.
1 crore, right? So just imagine, I'm sure that this WhatsApp group or the advertisement about these Bhagavad Gita classes would have gone to, if not to the entire crore of people, but at least thousands or lakhs of people. But see how many of us are here in this call. That itself goes to show that Bahunam Janmanam Ante, out of millions of people, only one comes to surrender to Krishna. So which means the rest of the people, 99% of people, they are either grossly foolish, lowest of mankind, knowledge stolen by illusion, and they are atheistic. Even the government that is ruling the nation or ruling the state, they are also atheistic. They don't have any idea whatsoever about who God is. Right? So what to speak of people who are following them? We saw Krishna is saying in the 2nd chapter that Arjuna, you need to fight this battle because you need to lead by example. Isn't it? So because many people would follow you, you want to set an example. So what kind of example are the modern politicians setting to all of us? Right? Because people in general, they fall into one among these 4 categories. So grossly foolish, lowest of mankind, deluded speculators, and atheists. Krishna further says, who are those that surrender to Krishna, who accept Krishna? 4 categories of people. What are those 4 categories? Those who are in great distress or problems in life, those who have desire for wealth, and those who are inquisitive. So what is this Krishna conscious movement all about? What is this Bhagavad Gita all about? I am so curious to know. So such are the people who are inquisitive. And finally, the 4th category is someone who is actually searching for the absolute knowledge. So these are the 4 categories of people, according to Krishna, are those who accept the Supreme Lord's teachings. So the distress, desirer of wealth, inquisitive, and those who are searching for knowledge of absolute. If you introspect your own life, definitely each one of us would fall into one of these 4 categories. Either we may come to Krishna consciousness because I have so much of problems in life. I want to search for happiness. So I have come to study Bhagavad Gita. That could be one category. Others may say, no, I want to earn a lot in my life. So people approach Krishna for that purpose as well. And some of us may be quite inquisitive to know what is Bhagavad Gita. I want to know all these slokas and what is the meaning of each sloka. I'm so curious to know. So that is 3rd category. And 4th category, which is quite rare, those who are seeking after the knowledge of absolute truth. Right? So broadly, Krishna is categorizing into these 4 categories. So the life lesson for us is, whether I have no desire or I have all desires, what should I be doing? Always keep worshipping Supreme Lord Krishna. Right? So then in the next section, Krishna goes on to speak about worship of devatas or demigods. Krishna gives some blunt statement here. It may not be palatable for us at the initial stage, but let's try to digest it and contemplate on this, because Krishna himself has told in Bhagavad Gita. What is he speaking about demigod worship? Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship under them according to their own natures. So typically Krishna is saying, when somebody wants to cross over the cycle of repeated birth, death, old age and disease, then that person would come to understand Krishna, would like to understand the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Whereas those who have all material desires, they want to have enjoyment in life, so they want to elevate themselves to higher planetary systems. Those kind of people, they would actually worship other demigods. So this is the statement given by the Supreme Lord Krishna. You just look at our own life. Before coming to understand Bhagavad Gita, how are we leading our life? At least I can speak for myself. To me, whenever, I mean, at least in my childhood days, I had this habit that before I go and attend an examination, I would visit one Vinayaka temple, which is close to my house, and I would circumambulate the deity a number of times, and then I would go behind the altar, and I had such a strong faith that if I write my wish behind Vinayaka's back, then definitely Vinayaka would reciprocate to my wish and he would fulfill my desire. So what was my wish? My wish was to score good marks in my examination. I could not think anything beyond that. Right? So whatever be the spiritual, so-called spiritual activities that I was doing, be it visit to the temples or to spiritual organizations, they were predominantly done to satisfy my material desires and to mitigate the problems in life. Isn't it? If you look back into your own life, you can clearly see that. I never had any thought in my life at all that one day I would try to understand Bhagavad Gita. Absolutely had no idea at all. In fact, Bhagavad Gita is something which I thought is like an historical book that will be used only in Indian judicial system. Especially having looked into many of the movies, Indian movies. So Bhagavad Gita is something on which somebody would try to place his vow on before he starts speaking. Right? So I had only that much of an idea about Bhagavad Gita until I came in touch with the devotees of Supreme Lord Krishna, the followers of Srila Prabhupada. So through those devotees, I came to know about the supremacy of Bhagavad Gita and how important it is for each one of us. Right? So definitely my intelligence was also stolen by material desires. Hence I was worshipping different demigods before coming to Krishna consciousness. And Krishna goes on to say, men of small intelligence, they worship demigods and their fruits are limited and temporary. Why their fruits are limited and temporary? because Krishna is like the Supreme Lord. He is like the root of the tree. All the other demigods and other living entities are like branches and twigs and fruits and roots of that big tree, right? So, and what does to whom does the gardener pour water to? Should he go and pour water to each and every branch and twigs and leaves of the tree? If you are intelligent, you would start pouring water to the root of the tree, isn't it? Nobody would go and pour to all the leaves of the tree. So by worshipping all the different 33 crore demigods, we are actually pouring water to each and individual leaf and branches and twigs of the tree. Right? So that's why Krishna says that such kind of worship is performed with lesser amount of intelligence. But he says, my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet because they worship Supreme Lord Krishna alone. So demigod worship done with lot of desires, not so much of intelligence, and the result is that it is going to give us temporary happiness and temporary accomplishments, and eventually we go to the planets of demigod. Each and every demigod, they have their own place to which we can attain. Like for example, sun god is there in the sun planet. You have Indra, who is ruling the kingdom of heaven, Brahma, who has his own loka. So like that, different demigods have their own lokas. So when you start worshipping them, you can go to that planet. But unfortunately, none of these places where the demigods reside, so that is free from the four problems of life, which is birth, death, old age, and disease. Even if you go to the planet of Brahma Loka, the place where Lord Brahma resides, that is also filled with birth and death. So you go to that place and one day you are going to die. Right? So only when somebody reaches the Supreme Lord's abode, then he does not return back to this material world. So let's not get caught only with these desires. So we need to focus on our permanent happiness. And how this permanent happiness is achieved? Only by serving the Supreme. Just like how I was mentioning, by watering the root of the tree, automatically all the other parts of the tree get nourishment. Right? And in the 27th verse in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks about who becomes a devotee and who cannot become a devotee. So why somebody is covered by illusion or maya? It is because of icha and dvesha, desire and hate. Right? So when we look at our own relationship with many people, it is actually determined based on these two aspects. We become friend to someone if we have a desire, and we feel inimical to somebody if we hate that person, or if we develop dvesha towards that person. So Krishna says, or he is going to say that when somebody can overcome both icha and dvesha, such a person can actually become a devotee of Lord Krishna. Right? So, and in this 28th verse, Krishna goes on to say, those persons who acted piously in previous life and whose sinful actions are completely removed are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage in service with determination. Who are those that try to become devotee of Lord Krishna? Those who have acted piously in previous life and those whose sinful actions are completely nullified. So, but the beauty of Krishna consciousness is that even though somebody may be so sinful, somebody may be not so pious, but still by coming into the process of Krishna consciousness, by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by the way, is the incarnation of Lord Krishna. He is Lord Krishna himself, who came 500 years back in Mayapur, in the place in West Bengal. So he was the one who gave this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Though Krishna in this verse clearly says, those who have acted only piously in previous life and those who are free from sinful actions, only those people engage in devotional service. This is Krishna's statement. But Krishna, when he came as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 500 years back, he was very, very merciful. So, those who are so sinful, even those people can also take up to the process of Krishna consciousness. That is the beauty of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. Right? Even Krishna is not so merciful. But Krishna, when he came as Lord Chaitanya, he was extremely merciful. He gave all the concessions to the people in Kali Yuga. So you simply chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, study Bhagavad Gita, try to act as per Bhagavad Gita, whatever may be your past life, how much ever sinful activities you may have performed, but still those are discounted. And you can become a nice devotee of Lord Krishna. Right? So forget the past, whatever sinful activities or pious activities you did. From now on, try to follow things as prescribed by Supreme Lord Krishna. That is what Krishna is going to say in 18th chapter also. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam saranam vraja aham tuam sarva papebhyo mokshayisyami masuchaha. You abandon all the religion and surrender only to me. I ensure that all the sinful actions and reactions are taken out of your account. So that guarantee Krishna is actually giving to all of us. So let's start today. If you have not started this journey, let's start chanting the holy name. As I mentioned, this chanting of holy name should be performed in a chanting bead or chanting mala, because we want to engage our senses, our hand, in the service of Lord Krishna. In case if any of you don't have this chanting bead, please let me know on my mobile. I can buy and send you one set of chanting bead and mala. Right? Start chanting, start taking this chanting process seriously, because this is Yuga Dharma in Kali Yuga. Simply by chanting this Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one can actually achieve perfection and we can cross beyond this Icha and Dvesha. Right? So, with that, I will come to a close in today's session. Thank you so much. Any questions that any one of you have? Any questions? Yes, Jayashri Mataji.
Actually, I stay in Jammu and Kashmir. So I wanted to know whether there is Rath Ratha tomorrow or not. How can I find out?
I'm not sure about Jammu Kashmir, Mataji. You can probably find out. Do you know where ISKCON is in Jammu Kashmir?
Yeah, it's in the
Okay.
outskirts of the city. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not familiar in that area, Mataji. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You can check with the devotees there.
Okay. None of the devotees are staying here in our area. So,
No, if you have the ISKCON Jammu Kashmir contact, if it is reachable for you, then you can try.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from today's class? Okay, so the essence of the class is you cannot miss Krishna in any form. So Krishna is so merciful. Even when we drink a drop of water, we can remember Krishna because Krishna is the taste in that water. Or when you go out and you see sunlight, then from that you can perceive Supreme Lord Krishna. So, and of course, when you go to temple, any Lord Krishna's temple, you can actually perceive the Supreme Lord's presence there. And we all are very fortunate. Out of millions of people, Krishna has chosen us. So we are so fortunate that we are getting this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. Let's try to become a nice devotee of Lord Krishna as much as possible without much of material desires. Our desire should be to attain Supreme Lord Krishna at the end of this life, because that is the perfection of one's life. This human form of life is not meant to struggle in this material world. Just imagine how much of struggle we are undergoing. Close to 20 years of struggle in the school and colleges, and then we go to a job, we work like an ass, literally, earn money, and then we try to maintain a family, we get kicked from all sides, and then we cultivate our children, and in future when we become old, the children, they don't take care of the parents, unfortunately. We instill so much of faith in our children that they would take care of us in future, but especially when it comes to old age, it's really, really painful. Nobody wants to be with us, even our own children, right? So do you want us to be leading such a life, such a pathetic life? Rather, when you become a devotee of Lord Krishna, Krishna will protect us. He will be our guardian. There is no need for us to fear at all when we take to the protection of Lord Krishna. Right? So for that, we need to build our faith. Just like how the cobbler was such a simple person, but he had so much of strong faith in Lord Krishna. Similarly, we need to have that faith in life. That come what may, Lord Krishna is my master and he will give protection to me. Right? So with that faith, when we practice Krishna consciousness, when we start chanting the holy name, then obviously we become very close to Krishna and we can try to achieve perfection at the end of this life. So thank you so much. Definitely I will share the Rath Yatra pamphlet to you all. Please try to join tomorrow. It's once in a year opportunity for all of us. And I would be happy to meet you all when you come down in person for the Rath Yatra. You can identify me. You are seeing my face
Yes, Prabhu.
each week. So I would be more than happy to have a conversation.
Sure.
To share.
Yes,
whatever.
Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Om
So thank
Saram
you.
Radhe Radhe. Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you all devotees. Srila Prabhupada
Hare
ki jai.
Krishna.
Srimad
Thank you,
Bhagavad Gita.
Babaji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Babaji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavad Pranams, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.